Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Thanks for joining another session of Azure Power Lunch. And today's topic is, and let me share my screen, is Azure Container Instances. So, as usual, today's agenda, and basically this is something about myself. I've been, if you don't know me, 13 years with Microsoft, more than 20 years in the software industry. My core area is app dev and distributed application integration. Been with Azure since its inception, and currently I'm an Azure Solution Architect role, pre-sale Solution Architect role. In terms of today's agenda, we are going to be talking about spending a few minutes on the Azure service updates, and then we're going to be talking about Azure Container Instances, what they are, why there's a need for such a service, and see something about them. So let's quickly go into the browser. As you know, so here are some of the things that happened in the Azure world. As you know, Azure is constantly upgraded multiple times a week, sometime multiple times a day. There are new services being added or features being added to existing services. So this one is for my Azure Government. Just remember that Azure Government is a instance of Azure specific for our public and government customers, and Azure DNS is now available in GA in Azure Government. So that's something now they can take advantage of it. So that's one thing I definitely want to suggest to our customers and our colleagues who are on the call, that look at what services are available in what region, because not every service is available in every region. Most of them are, but some of the services they may not be available in every region. And on the same note, there are new services that are available in there are new services, there are new region where app service on Linux and web app for containers. So the way you can deploy services in Azure is with app service. You can spin up containers as well, and that's where there are new regions which are now available, which is one of the region is Australia and Southeast. Before it was only Australia East, and now there is another region which is available now for that particular service. Moving on, the third one is the global VNet peering, which is I'm sure everybody understands about Azure VNet peering, which allows you to talk to two VNets, without a need of a connectivity like a site-to-site VPN or something like that. Basically, what VNet peering does, global VNet peering does, is that those VNets don't have to be in the same region. One can be in one region and across the globe, and another can be in there, and they can be connected without a site-to-site VPN or some type of network connectivity using Azure Backbone behind the scene. So there are more regions being added for that public preview. Remember, this feature is currently in public preview. And Siraj, if you don't mind, can you look at the I'm sure you're already looking at it at the IM window, and let me know if there are any questions.
Yep.
Thank you. So that's basically their new regions being added, and their new region which are now available to do the peering across. So that's kind of a quick update. There are other updates available. Please look at, just Google, Bing, Azure Service Updates, and you will see a list of recent updates. Also, keep in mind Azure Blog. Just search for Azure Blog, your favorite, search engine, and you should you should be able to see what is kind of a new things that is happening in Azure world. So there are two key resources. Okay, moving on to our topic. I'm going to have a few slides just to set the context, and then we will move on to our some demos and then back to our topic of discussion. So what are containers? So just to do a level set, containers are based on OS virtualization. Basically, just like you use virtual machines, which are created through hardware virtualization, containers are based on OS virtualization. They are, when they started, they were more kind of a used for deployment and packaging. Normally, whenever developers used to write their code, there was a big issue that this code works on my machine, but it doesn't work on the QA environment and things like that. Containers alleviate this problem by providing a standard environment with a certain set of resources and a certain set of dependencies packaged all together. So when a developer tested their app in the container, and that container moves throughout different environment, that kind of really solved that problem of it runs on my machine but doesn't run anywhere else. But as they gained popularity, they became more and more of a way to take advantage of all the available resources to kind of fully capitalize on the resources of provided by a VM. So in terms of containers, and there are multiple ways you can spin up containers in Azure. You can use Azure Container Service. You can run a VM and spin containers on top of it, as well as you can use third-party orchestration or container services as well. And at the same time, you can use app service and spin up your web apps as containers. So what does Azure Container Service does? Azure Container Instances, Azure Container Instances make containers the first-class citizen of the Azure world. This is the fastest and easiest way to run containers in any cloud, not just Azure, in any cloud, period. Because what you do is, just like virtual machines or just like a web apps, containers are now the first-class citizen. You can just go in and spin up a container instance with a line of command or from the GUI, PowerShell or CLI. So that's what allows you to do. You can spin up Linux containers and Windows containers as well. Just keep in mind, this service is in public preview and it's not available in all the regions. So just keep in mind that that service is, since it's not available in all the regions, you may not be able to do that. So just if you're planning to play around with this service, just follow certain region. I think it's available in East US. Go ahead.
Navid, Brani is here. Sorry for my ignorance, guys. What's the fundamental difference between container service and container instance?
Okay, for container service is basically a platform, and with the latest AKS, which is Kubernetes as Service, is a platform to run Kubernetes service as a managed platform. It provides containers, but you have to run that infrastructure. With container instance, you can spin up a single container without requiring any VM or any infrastructure, without.
So for container instance, you have to have underlying VM. And
container instance, for container instance, you don't. For container service, yes, it is running on top of underlying VM, so you will see those resources pop up as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So let's quickly go through a demo and see how we can spin up a container instance. So let's go in here, and I'm in the Azure Cloud Shell. And by the way, if you don't know, I didn't know it before. You can run the Cloud Shell just directly from the browser, shell.azure.com. I'm running the CLI mode, so I'm gonna run Azure AZ container. So this is basically the first class, the top level resource. Now I'm gonna say create, and then I'm gonna call it a resource group, and I'm gonna name it NZACI, and then I'm gonna name the container NZ Hello World 3. And then the next thing is let's talk about the image, and the image name is Microsoft/ACI-Hello World, and IP address. We want to give it an IP address, and we're going to make it public. Okay. Finally, ports, and we're going to make it 80. So let's run this. Let's see what happens. Okay, I think I misspelled IP address. Oh, sorry.
2 Ds.
Yeah. It's funny. So what
it's
is
not ASDRES, yes.
Yes, you're right. And by the way, you can go in and you can see those containers. So we can go in and we can see what containers are AZ container and do a list output as table. So by the way, I'm just playing with this stuff. So as you can see, we just ran this a second ago, and this container is already running. As you can see, the provision state is succeeded. NZHW3, it has a public IP address. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this public IP address, copy it, and I'm going to, paste it in a browser. And by the way, it will take a few seconds before this this address, this page comes online. So just give it a second. On the other hand, what we can do is you can spin up other other containers as well. So let's go in and spin up an Nginx container as well. So same command. Now what we're going to do is we're going to spin up another image called
So Naveed, the image is containing already how many CPUs, memory type, how much memory, OS type, that's all encapsulated, right?
Exactly. So I'm using the default one, which is 1 GB, 1 core, and 1.5 GB. You can specify how much RAM, and how much CPU you need.
But that when you specify creating the image, or so my question is, are you creating container using the image, or you can also manually in a line saying, hey, I want this type of OS, I want like 2 CPUs, 4 gig and stuff like that?
Yeah. So with this image, I'm specifying the OS and what type of system go on that container.
Okay.
But I can also specify
in a command line.
Yes. So right now I'm not, but for just sake of simplicity, but I can definitely specify how many cores and how many CPU this container will need.
Okay, I will look up the command. Okay.
Hey Naveed, I think you misspelled Nginx, so it's Nginx.
Really?
No, this is fine. Okay, my screen was not refreshing. That's good.
Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so let's see. As you can see, it is creating the Nginx image as well. Let's go back to our previous one and let's see if that is running. Yes, that is running. So as you can see, in a matter of seconds, you can spin up containers and you can get those containers going. So that is running. So let's copy this address and let's see if we can get to that Nginx image. So let's go in here. Let's close this, and once again, HTTP. And once again, it takes a few seconds. So while, this screen is refreshing, just keep in mind, let's go back and look at the results of the when we run the command, it tells you what type of OS is that, what is the provisioning state, and what type of, what type is it, and all that. And by the way, it also tells you what are the resources, okay? CPU and ports. And by the way, you can do the same thing from the UI as well. And from the PowerShell, of course, goes without saying, okay? Let's go back here. Let's see if this thing is up or not. Yeah. So, it is running. So just like matter of less than a minute, and we have the Nginx image is running. Of course, if you run heavier images, it will take a little more time. Just remember, it's a lot of work is going on in optimizing Windows images, because if you run Windows images, I can tell you it will take some time. So it's not as fast as Linux. So just a word of caution on that topic. Okay. Going back, let's go back to our presentation. So, okay, what are the benefits of the container instances? Why we need another container service when we already have containers, raw containers, container service, or app service, which allow us to run web apps in containers? Okay, first of all, this is the fastest way to run a container in the cloud. There is no VM management. We don't see a VM underneath it. Okay. You are charged per second in terms of billing, and we will see the billing in the Azure calculator. So you charge a cost per billing and in terms of per second for billing, and we will know why this is important. Because when you are, remember, this is not for your steady state workload. If you have a steady state workload which is running on containers, you are much better off running it in Azure Container Service or App Service, AKS or Azure App Service for containers. This is for those burstable scenario where you don't want to have extra capacity left in your container service to always there to have, to burst out, but you want to use these container instances for that burstable capacity. Okay, and by the way, we will talk about that as well. Deploy images. You can deploy images from Docker Hub, Azure Container Registry, and of course your personal Docker registry as well. Here is a quick technical model. So underneath, definitely there's a VM. They're not running in vacuum, and then with that VM, you get a Azure Container Group. This is basically a hypervisor level boundary. And then under that, you are running your virtual machines, container instances. And those container instances, they are sharing a single VM. Whenever, that's where ACI group comes in. So if you spin up a number of containers in a Azure Container Instance group, they will spin up on a same virtual machine. So that's the ACI group. And basically you can attach, file shares with it, and that's how you can persist data. Just keep in mind that the billing model is per second. So there is a charge for the creation of the VM, one-time charge of the container. When the container is created, you are charged 0.25 cents for that. And then you will have a per second charge for one vCPU core is 0.125 cents per core, and same for the memory. You can go into Azure Calculator. Go ahead. Any questions? And basically you can go ahead and you can put these in the calculator and find out how much it costs. Just remember, you may find out that if you have a VM of same size, it costs less. Once again, this is on-demand burstable capacity available to you. So that's why there is a premium charge for it. Okay. what are the common scenarios? A common scenario is a task automation. So basically what you can do is, let's say you want to run a task that you run for a short while, maybe 30 minutes on an hour every day, or a certain time, or maybe certain scenarios. You can run those tasks using these Azure Container Instances. Start a container, run that task. When that task is finished, done, you remove, delete the container, you move on. CI/CD pipelines, agents. So let's say you have a continuous integration, continuous deployment agents that you run whenever you have some changes in the code. And they run a certain time or certain thing happens. Instead of running those VMs where they sit idle most of the time and maybe work 20% of the time, you can take advantage of container instances, spin those up, do the task, and then spin them down. They will be faster because virtual machine will take more time to spin up and go down. Then you have small-scale batch processing. Let's say you have a batch processing task, a small batch processing task that you need to process on demand. Just remember, for batch processing, the core service that is recommended is Azure Batch, but if it's a small-scale batch processing task, Azure Container Instances may be a good fit. Simple web apps. Once again, you have to decide if you want to do if it's a web app that that's going to be running continuously. It may be a good idea to use Azure App Service for web apps and containers to do that. But if it's a task for a short while, then it will Azure Container Instances can be used. Okay, so we are short on time, so I'm just going to go through quickly. But the thing is, whenever we talk about containers, the things come to mind: auto scaling, rolling upgrades, service discovery, and everything leads to a container orchestrator. The last thing Microsoft want to do is build another container orchestrator, because there are container orchestrators in the market and they're very popular. There's a lot of work being done. So that's the direction we are heading towards. That's where this ACI connector, which is currently in, I should call it an experimental or private, it's in a preview that's available as a GitHub project in GitHub. What it allows you to do is provides the ability to spin up container instances from your AKS cluster. So let's say you have an Azure Container Service cluster, and by the way, if somebody is not speaking, if they can mute themselves, I would really appreciate it. So what it does is it allows you to spin up container instances in the case when you need more capacity, and that's the ACI, Azure Container Instance, that works with AKS and spin up container instances. So that's where, remember what I said in the beginning, that let's say you have a container cluster and you have fully utilized that, and instead of, for the burstable capacity, instead of adding some some more nodes to the cluster so that you can burst, you can use Azure Container Instances. So whenever you need to burst, you can spin up more Azure Container Instances and shut them down. So you don't have to pay that, you don't have to keep that reserve capacity there forever. This is available right now as kind of a project. It's not even in, I don't even call it a public preview. It's very experimental. So this is this is basically just a high level diagram. This is your kind of a Kubernetes control plane. These are pods running on a virtual machine. and then there is the ACI connector, and now there are pods running inside the Azure container instances. Okay, so since we are a little bit short on time, I just want to go over the container option. So as we can see, there are a number of container options. You have Azure Web Apps. These are for web apps and services that use containers. So if you have application, legacy web apps that you want to run in Azure Web Apps containers, Azure Web Apps for containers is your friend. Service Fabric. That's also allow you to run containers. You want to build microservices and you want to run it in containers. That's where Azure Service Fabric comes into picture. Then you have Azure Container Services. You want to run Kubernetes, and you want to take advantage of that. You want to run these OSS orchestrators to manage your containers. Use ACS. Azure Batch, this is for scalable batch processing, and Azure Container Service to run individual containers. And as this service evolves more and more, you will see more and more integration with these other container services that we have in Azure, especially with AKS. We have already seen a preview of that with Azure Container ACI connector. Okay, so this is what we have today. Run Windows and Linux. Right now, you can go take the CPU and memory. I think 4 CPU. I think it's a little higher than 8. I don't remember. I think this is an old slide. You can expose containers via public IP. You can mount Azure file storage. Right now, you cannot manage disk, but you can mount Azure file storage for persistent storage. You can set environment variable. You can override command lines and all. So these are the things you can do with container instances today. At this point, we have a few minutes left, so I want to open for any questions.
Hey, Naveed, there are some questions in the chat window. The one is from Fonzie. It's like, I would like to see some performance measurement counter for ACI AKS if we have it available through log analytics.
I mean, you want to measure performance of ACI versus AKS? Is that right? Or
I think the question is regarding like general Azure Container Instance and managed Kubernetes service performance monitoring.
Yeah, I think since they are I think there is something ACS integration with OMS, but I will definitely get back to you. I think
yeah, I just pasted a URL. You can monitor your AKS.
I'm sorry, I had muted myself. The question is not around that. It's just around measurement. For example, how would you get performance counter from whether it's AKS or ACI? It doesn't matter. I just need to understand how my container is performing and whether I'm messing up with my customer SLA. So do you have it integrated already with log analytics through, or no? That's the question. Sorry.
Yeah, it is actually. So I just pasted this in the chat window, and also you can use Grafana and InfluxDB stack as well on your Kubernetes cluster to monitor your for like monitoring, right?
Sure. It's more around. We're using log analytics for a lot of things already. Okay. So my question was, do you have these counters visible through log analytics?
Yes, they are. Yeah,
very good.
Yeah, they can be enabled as a sidecar, and then.
Do you have that? I would appreciate it if you pasted up the link, Suraj.
I'm looking for it, but I just
Okay.
Yeah, just take a look.
No problem.
There is a link that talks about.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed.
Monitoring. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you very much indeed.
Any other questions, guys?
I think there's not any more questions.
That's great. Yeah. So thank you very much for joining. Go ahead, Siraj, you were saying something?
No, I was once again just going to say that we have changed our recording location. So previously we were hosting all the recordings on channel 9, but now we have changed it to YouTube. So here's the channel info. You can go ahead and subscribe and see all the videos. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining the call today. It was a wonderful presentation, Naveed. It was great explanation for ACI. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Naveed.
Friday.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.